So today I want to talk about something that came up last week with the sister that was teaching the Arabic class. And it's come up in the news. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago with the setting of the capital of Israel in Jerusalem. So I wanted to see if I could elaborate a little bit more on Bnei Israel, or the children of Israel, and how it is presented in Al-Islam, and the tradition of, where they come from and who they are today. Now, what happened a couple of weeks ago, I think it was last Thursday before last, because I was sick. The sister went to a panel that she was invited to, and there was a couple rabbis there, and the audience was almost all Jewish, and perhaps a couple of Christians. But there was no Muslims there representing Al-Islam except for her. She was on the panel. So she was alone and under attack.
Okay.
Yes, for sure that happened. I was very upset. Unfortunately, she had sent me a couple emails pertaining to it. But I have like 5 different emails, so I didn't check the ones that she asked about, and I was like deathly sick. If I would have known she was the only person there, I probably still would have tried to make it. But they kind of ambushed her. She's, as we all know, a very learned person, so
yes.
She's very knowledgeable, so I'm
Yes.
sure she held her own, but in a hostile environment, she was looking in the audience for other Muslims, and there was none. So we're going to have a talk with another imam who was scheduled to come, but he couldn't make it because they changed the schedule because of the snowstorm. So she was the only one there. At least other members of the masjid, other Muslims, period, would, if they had known,
Right.
we would have been there to at least
Yeah.
raise a hand, help out. Now, I had seen one of the rabbis previously with our imam here, or former imam before he returned to Allah in Virginia Wesleyan.
Right.
He seemed to be someone who was antagonistic towards Al-Islam. And everyone else, it was an interfaith dialogue in Virginia Wesleyan. Everyone else was kind of, it wasn't a time for a debate, you know what I mean? But and it had Catholics, Christians, Muslims, Jews on the panel, but when it became his turn, he felt the need to say something towards Al-Islam.
Okay.
And I wasn't even a part of this community then. So I'm in the background, and I raised my hand because he had a Quran in front of him. So he said one of the particular verses that you almost always hear, like slay them wherever you find them, or something like that, right? And was in attempting to assert that Al-Islam is a violent religion. So what I was going to ask him to do was read the verses before and the verses after it in context so we can see, and then because my aim is almost always to see someone's intentions. Because you can make a mistake and say you think about the Quran or the Bible or whatever says thus and so, but when it's right there and you read it, I want them to apologize. So unfortunately or fortunately, it was another Muslim who's very good in debates. His name is Shadid Lewis, was there, and he stood up and read the verses before I can get my question asked, for him to read them himself. So this, I think, is the same rabbi, because not only was the sister there by herself, it was an empty chair, and he was on this side. He said, "Oh, nobody's sitting here," and he sat beside her like he was her friend, like being friendly. As soon as it started, she was under attack, and people in the audience were asking questions. And one of the reasons why I write on comparative religion is to arm Muslims in this kind of circumstance. One reason is to increase our iman and our confirmation of what we believe in to be true, but also in this certain situation, sometimes we are put in these predicaments and we need to be able to defend our religion. I'm sure she did a great job, but no one was there to ascertain that. And then she was in an audience full of people. It's like being in a hostile environment, so it was unnecessary, and I felt I should have at least been there. So I'm trying to get on the panel now, get in the interfaith so I can be a part of it. Because initially, she asked me to be in, and I asked the imam, and he said he was getting out of it, but he never gave the reason because he was ill. And I think the reason had to do with some backhandedness, you know.
Oh, okay.
So he said he advised me not to get in it, but he never gave me the reason why. I feel like because that happened, that I should now, because I'm more, I think, equipped to handle that. One of the questions that the audience asked was, why is it that the Quran speaks so negatively about the children of Israel? So that was the reason, one of the reasons why I'm presenting this talk. The audacity for a person who believes in the Bible to say, while the Quran casts them in a negative light, is beyond outrageous. The Quran doesn't say anything that the Jewish Torah doesn't say times 10, times 20, times 30. Allah never in the Quran threatens to kill everyone ever born because of the sins of the children of Israel. But on multiple occasions in the Bible, as soon as you start reading it, they are so rebellious, according to their own scripture, that God wants to kill them and everybody ever born. So for someone to even suggest that we cast the children of Israel in a disparaging light is something that should have been addressed, and I wish that I was there to address it. Just today, well, the other day, I used to watch Bill Maher show, Real Time, right? And I stopped watching it after he had said something about him being a slave and all this stuff. And I had already had some contention because he's very anti-Islam. But he said some things about politics that I liked. But ultimately, I couldn't stomach it anymore, so I stopped watching it. And the strange thing is, I wanted to see like what he had to say about a certain subject. And then on social media, you know how you can get on any social media outlet now or any website, and people are talking about what he's talking about without watching the show. He said in his last episode, he said, well, Jerusalem should be the capital of Israel because they won the war. I mean, and I already know he's a Zionist. Right now, he's a Zionist who doesn't believe in God. He's an atheist. When Zionism is rooted in God gave him this land. How can you be a Zionist if you don't even believe in God? But I mean, that's modern Zionism. So that was another reason that I wanted to talk about this. And obviously, we know the person who was elected by the Electoral College to be the president is made Jerusalem the capital of Israel. With all those circumstances culminating, I felt that I should talk a little bit about the children of Israel. So we know that, so I want to make sure I separate the two, because what is presented in the Bible and what is presented in the Quran about the children of Israel, there are some similarities, but there are some sharp differences. So when we think about Israel, the first thing you think about is the name Israel, right? So that came from a man, a prophet in Islam, and he's a prophet in the Bible named Jacob. Now he is christened or named Israel according to the book of Genesis, I think it's chapter 32, when he's running from his brother Esau, and he sees what amounts to be God, and he wrestles God, and he ultimately defeats God. According to this story, it says, I have prevailed with God and with man, and I've seen God with my own eyes, and my life is preserved. So at that moment, it says God named him Israel, which literally means wrestle with God. Now, this story is not at all in Islam or in the tradition of Islam, but the name Israel is in the Quran. Now, the people that wrote the Bible, at least in my estimation, was attempting to explain away some things. Like they wanted to explain why people had different languages. So that's where we get the word Babel. So, you know, they were trying to reach the height of the heavens, and God, even in the Bible, is a little paranoid that they can do this, so he changes their languages, and then they start babbling to one another, and that's where we get the term Babel from. But in this same instance, there are things that are mentioned in in the Bible that we can't possibly believe as being the truth. That God would wrestle a human being and the human being would win and then he would name him. And the place that he named this is called Penuel, meaning the face of God. So Jacob is saying, according to the Bible, that he saw God's face and he said, my life is preserved. Because in the Bible, in the Quran, people can't see God's face or see God's glory, not necessarily his face. But at any rate, the word Israel means struggle or wrestle with God. Now, when you read the Bible, you see that these people did struggle with God repeatedly in the sense that they were rebellious. They sinned numerous times, and Allah gave them opportunity after opportunity. So in that sense, they struggled with God, but there was not literally a human being that wrestled with God. Now, because it is in their book, they're forced to believe that, but they don't understand that it's not literally true that this man wrestled God, but that they wrestle with following the will of God, which is repeated numerous times. So from Jacob, his name was changed to Israel, and his name is changed multiple times in the Bible. So in one instance, when it said his name is changed to Israel, it said you will no longer be called Jacob. In the next chapter, God calls him Jacob. And then he changes his name again. And the reason this is the case is because the Jewish Torah is a culmination of oral traditions that are put together into a book. So many different people told the same stories, and these stories were culminated into one book. That's why you have two stories of Noah on the ark. One time it says it was 7 pairs of animals, another time it says 2. You have 2 times when man is born or man is created by God. It's multiple instances where you can see that there was a culmination or collection or combination of different stories put together to tell one story. And that's the reason that Jacob's name is changed to Israel twice in the same book. But at any rate, so he had 12 sons and he had daughters as well, but they don't count the daughters. I mean, this was a time of were male dominant, so they didn't count the daughters at all. So when it says the 12 tribes, the 12 children of Israel, it's only talking about the sons. So it was 12 tribes, 12 sons, right? And then they were, once they got the land of Israel, so the other thing is in the Quran, it mentions that God did promise them this land. And the same thing is true in the Bible. However, there again are 2 different stories. Abraham was a rich man and he bought his land. However, and then he was the person who was promised the land for him and his offspring, right? And his offspring lived there and he bought this land. But then there's a story after Moses, where Joshua kills everybody on the land. And God has sanctioned that they can kill all the Canaanites, so kill everybody who lived on this land. And according to Joshua, they went from city to city, killing everyone. It says they utterly destroyed them. They did not just kill the people, they killed their animals, they burned the house down, they did everything. They totally wiped the people out. And this is in the Jewish Torah. So the reason I also want to make this distinction about the Jewish Torah is because I don't want to confuse it with what the Quran says the Torah. The Torah is the revelation given to Musa. The Jewish Torah, or the first 5 books of the Bible, were not given to Moses. You can tell because it's written in 3rd person. It says Moses did this, and Moses said this, and Moses died at the end of it, right? And it says no man has come to the children of Israel to this day like the man Moses. Moses didn't write that. Obviously, it was written long after he had died. Someone else wrote this, and unfortunately, some people still ascribe that to Musa. Almost no scholar believes that he has written this. No scholar of any repute believes that he wrote the books that are in the first 5 books of the first 5 books of the Bible, what is called the Pentateuch. But at any rate, I wanted to distinguish between those 2. So after they had this land, so again, one narration is that the land was purchased. The other one was that they killed everybody and stole the land. Now, it's really up to them which one they want to believe. I mean, but I would suggest that if someone wants to say that they are people of God, they wouldn't suggest that God sanction them to murder people and take their land. It would be more reasonable to believe that Abraham bought the land and his family lived on the land and they intermingled with the people who are already living there, the Canaanites. Otherwise, the alternative is that they murdered the people and they committed genocide. So I personally don't believe that Abraham, Jacob, any of them were murderers, so I would believe first that Abraham bought the land, not that they killed everyone. And the Quran does not mention anything about killing anyone and taking their land. So it is a correction by omission that he promised them this land and they got this land without murdering someone would suggest that that's how they attained the land, through acquisition, not through murder. So while they're on this land, they split into two factions, right? So it was in the northern, in the northern part of Israel was the two kingdoms, which was from Benjamin and Judah. And in the southern part, do I have that right? Yeah. No. In the southern part, it was Benjamin and Judah. And the northern part was called the House of Israel, which was the other 10 tribes of Israel. So they were separated, but they separated themselves between the 10 and the 2. Right? So this was after the death of Solomon. His son didn't have the ability to reign the same way Saul in the Bible or David, the prophet of Islam, or Solomon ruled. So after his death, the 10 tribes seceded and then they split into two different factions. So one was the south, which was Judah and Benjamin's tribe, and the other was the north, which was the other 10 tribes. So about 200 years after the split, the Assyrians invaded Israel and the northern kingdom was conquered. So to keep the conquered nation subjugated, the Assyrians' policy was to break them up by deporting them, the native tribe, deporting them and sending them in other places that they had already ruled. So when the house of Israel was conquered, most of the people belonging to the northern kingdom was deported and settled everywhere in the Assyrian kingdom, in places like Nineveh, which is where the prophet Jonah was, Huran, and other places like the Iran-Iraq border, which is what it's called now. And they were replaced by settlers. So on the land of Israel, when the 10 tribes lost their land, the Assyrians moved on their land, right? And the settlers intermarried together with the remaining Israelites, and they became the Samaritans, which is what is mentioned in the New Testament. And the Israelites who had been deported intermarried with the people in the places that they were in. And they resettled as well. And eventually they lost their identity, they disappeared, the culture was lost, and this is where you get the idea of the lost tribes of Israel. So the 10 tribes of Israel were disseminated all around the world, or in the Middle East. They lost the land, and the only two people that were left, the only two tribes that were left were in the southern kingdom, and that was Benjamin's tribe and Judah's tribe. But a little bit after that, around 586 BCE, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar attacked the southern kingdom and exiled them to Babylon. And the Babylonians destroyed Solomon's temple, and they took the people captive. But a man named Nehemiah brought the Jewish people back. I don't know if you should call them Jewish at this point, but they're called Jewish because they came from this tribe of Judah. So I'll just keep that in mind. All right, so they were called Jewish people. They were brought back to Jerusalem, and they rebuilt the walls and the gates. But the northern kingdom was lost completely. Now there is speculation, wide speculation from different people throughout the world that they were these 10 tribes. Whether you were in India, China, Japan, Ireland, everywhere, people from all over, whenever they felt special and they felt that they were subjugated and different from other people, they would say that they were from these 10 tribes. But no one knows for sure because they intermarried and intermingled with other tribes. And then after that, about 500 years later, the Romans destroyed the temple again, and the Jewish people were driven out of their homeland again. And this is also around the time when the Romans rule was around the
Around the
time.
time of Jesus, wasn't
For sure, yes. It was around the time of Jesus, and they were also waiting for a Messiah.
it? Right.
This Messiah would come and free them from Roman persecution. Now, Jewish people to this day are still waiting for the Messiah,
Right.
and have gotten out of the bondage of Roman people. So, in other words, their understanding of the Messiah was mistaken. If they thought the Messiah was going to be the king that brought them out of subjugation from Rome, and they got out of subjugation from Rome without him, then they misunderstood what the Messiah was. So it stands to reason that they misunderstood then. So perhaps, which is what we say, is that they missed out on the Messiah, who was Jesus or Isa alayhi salam. So that they were waiting for a Messiah that time, and then they came out of subjugation without him, shows that they misunderstood the whole thing to start with. Now, another point of contention is with the second. So when I was talking about them being with the Assyrians, now came to me just a little while ago while I was typing this up, is that in the Jewish Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, it is against their rule or against the commandments for them to intermarry, for the children of Israel to intermarry with people who are not from the children of Israel. And in Deuteronomy, it explains this. I'm going to read just a little bit of it. It says, when the Lord your God brought you into the land you are entering to possess and drive out before you many nations, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, Jebusites, a couple other people, right? When the Lord your God has delivered them over to you and you have defeated them, you must destroy them completely, right? And this is what the Bible says, right? Make no treaty with them. Make no treaty with them, all right? And show them no mercy. All right? Okay, do not intermarry with them. Do not give your daughters to their sons or take their daughters for your sons. And it goes on a little bit further. I just wanted to show that it says, do not intermarry with them. This is what the Jewish Torah says, right? But the funny part of that is that the Assyrians, after they took over, they intermarried with the children of Israel. And when they settled to another place, they intermarried with them. So that would stand to reason, or at least in my estimation, that they had a different Torah than what is presented today, right? If they intermarried with other races, and they intermarried with other people who believed in something different, perhaps they didn't believe in this Torah that we have today, right? And it also mentions in the Quran, it says that they knew of, it says the children of Israel knew of the Quran in their previous scriptures. So we don't have anything in the Torah now or in the Bible now that specifically says anything about the Quran. So that would also stand to reason that whatever they had previously is not what they have now, right? And it also mentions, I'm gonna give you a couple other things that it mentions. So in reading the first 5 books of the Bible, right, it was amazing to me, something that was absent from it. When you read the Quran, there are subjects that are repeated so much you can't forget them. One of obviously is the oneness of Allah. The other is righteousness and belief. Another thing is paradise. In the Bible, the first 5 books, 613 commandments, not one time does it mention paradise. Not ever. In the whole 5 books of it. So this is another clear sign that this is not actually the words of Allah given to Musa alayhi salam. If the words of Allah is geared towards telling you about this life and how you get to the hereafter, and it doesn't mention the hereafter at all in 5 books, giving you information that says this person begot this person, begot that person, begot that person, begot that person. I mean, it's chapters just talking about who begot who, but it doesn't say a word about paradise. Right? Again, it stands to reason that what that book is that they possess is not from Musa. Another thing in the Quran, it mentions that Jacob and his sons would say, you know how, I don't know if you ever read the Bible, it says, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. In the Quran, it says they also mention, they put Ismail in that list, but they never do that in the Bible, because in the Bible he's seen as someone who is negative. Allah says that he is in those ranks, and that Abraham's sons mentioned him. So when not Abraham's son, I mean Jacob's sons mentioned him when they were giving prayer. They were saying that we want to follow the God of Abraham, the God of Ismail, the God of Ishaq, and the God of our father Jacob. So he was in, the Quran says that he was mixed into that line of prophets, and his sons, Jacob's sons, knew this. And there was a tablet in a place called Ibla that was inscribed 1,500 years before the Bible was written, that mentions David, it mentions Ibrahim, and it mentions Ismail, right? So again, Ismail was someone who was a prophet of God, and they were seen and mentioned in the same vein as all the other prophets of God. But in the Jewish Torah, he is mentioned as someone who is negative, someone who is shunned, someone who is looked down upon, he and his mother. So again, what they possess is not the words of God. And the Quran says the learned of the children of Israel know that this is true when they hear it. So when you believe in the oneness of God, right, and then you believe that God has ordained a path for you, or his will for you and a guidance for you to follow, and then you hear of a religion that says they have the same thing, right? And then if I believe in Al-Islam, and someone says they have something that's similar to it, I want to know, I would at least juxtapose the two. But when you do that, when you have this oneness in Judaism, first of all, before the Babylonian capture, it was almost, I think the word is pantheism. So they believed that the God that they believe in was supreme, or he was better than other gods, but not that he was one and only. Only after the Babylonian capture in the book of Isaiah, I believe, is when it starts saying God is one alone and by himself. So in the first commandment, it says, have no gods before me. That's not the same thing as don't have any other gods except me. That's a huge, huge difference. So when you juxtapose the two, Al-Islam and Judaism, Al-Islam is Judaism universal. How can you look at Al-Islam and not see the superiority it has over your religion? That it encompasses your religion and more, and brings other people into the fold. How can you not see that? So Allah says that the learned of the children of Israel know this. So how is it that, if I'm in a discussion with someone else, and they say that what they believe in is true, and then they say, well, you have to be born a certain way, and once you're born a certain way, God likes you or favors you because of this. And I say, no, it's God favors you because of the righteousness that you do and the things that you believe. Is there any rebuttal that makes sense to that? How can I not be saying what is more sensible, more logical, more fair, more godly, more in line with what God would want? That you have your actions of what you're judged upon, not where you were born. So in the Quran, it says, Jesus is recorded as saying, I am the messenger sent to you, children of Israel, right? Now that meant something different to me than what it did this morning. Because in the Bible, it also says, Jesus says, there was a Samaritan girl that came to him. She was, a woman that came to him, and her daughter was sick. And she said she was coming after him for him to heal her daughter. And Jesus is recorded as saying, first of all, he ignored her, but she kept pressing him. And then he said, I am only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Right? Now, I always took that to mean like I'm only here for Jewish people, right? But if we go back to what I said previously, all right, Benjamin and Judah were the house of Judah in the southern kingdom, right? So the other people who were in the house of Israel, the other 10 tribes, were not what you would call Jews. They did not follow Judaism, because all of those words came from Judah. right? So when he says the lost sheep of the house of Israel in the Bible, he's talking to these other 10 tribes that disseminated all over the world, right? And we don't know, and they intermarry with other people. So he also says in the Bible, it says, my sheep will hear my voice and know me, right? So they would know the message when they hear it. They would know the truth in the same way Allah says the same thing about the learning of the children of Israel. When they hear the El-Islam and they understand that what we have is something universal from what they already previously had, how can they not accept it? How can they not see that it is true unless they are doing it intentionally, unless they chose to not accept what is true? So when he says the lost sheep of the house of Israel, that is something totally different from saying Jews. Because initially I was thinking about, because I would ask someone, particularly a person who believes in Jesus, who's a Christian, who's non-Jewish. At any rate, he is giving a specific group of people. He's saying, I am only sent to these certain people, right? And then he also says later that there was someone who will come after me who will lead you in all truth. So ultimately, what he's saying here is, I'm sent to these lost sheep of house of Israel, and there's going to be a successor who comes after me who's going to talk to the entire world. But then again, Allah affirms that he chose the children of Israel. He's saying that they were chosen and favored over other people. In the same way it says the same thing about Esau's mother, Miriam, that she was preferred, chosen over other women. The problem with that, though, is, or not the problem that people have in understanding that, though, is that they don't understand that God chose every people, right? There were prophets sent to every single people. And their misunderstanding is what caused such stir. And that God chose them, they believe that God chose me because of my heritage or because of my ancestry, not because of what I do. Even in the Bible, repeatedly, God says to them, this promise will remain true as long as you follow my commandments. But over and over and over again, they do not follow his commandments. There is a parable in the Bible that Jesus talks about a vineyard. And he's talking about God sending messengers repeatedly to these people. And then they slay the messengers, they beat them up, they do all kinds of things to disparage them from giving the truth. And what he says in Matthew, it says, so it's 3 different times it's repeated in there, but only in Matthew it says this. It says, Jesus is recorded as saying, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and will be given to a people who will produce fruit. Now this same message is repeated in the Quran. It says, if you don't do the will of God, then it'll be given to someone else, to a different people who will do what Allah wants them to do. So the same thing is true here in that Allah chose them to deliver the message to other people. But what did they do but hoard it and keep it for themselves? And the same thing is true here, even with the custodians of Al-Islam right now. The people who are in charge in Arabia, right? When they are dancing with Donald Trump, who gave away Jerusalem. Perhaps they don't realize that this message is for them as well. Allah says, if I will substitute in your place another people and they won't be like you. Right? So if you don't do the message of Allah, his will is going to be done whether you do it or not. So the same thing will happen to you. The same thing that happened to the children of Israel. They were put in this privileged position to teach other people. And many of the prophets did and many of the people did. But overall, they did not accept the message and as it continued. That's why they did not accept Jesus as the Messiah. And then Christians did not accept Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Jesus never said, I'm the last prophet. He never said, this is the last revelation. In fact, he said, there's somebody coming after me. So if you are a true Christian, you would have to be expecting someone else. And that someone else was Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let me think if there's anything else I wanted to add. I think that's all I have. Oh, the last thing I think I did want to talk about was what we can learn from the children of Israel. What we can learn from Jewish people altogether is that the belief that you are chosen and you are special can make you do some very special things. but it also can make you do some very horrendous things. So if we can use the good and forsake the bad, then we can overcome as a people, whether it's African Americans, whether it is Muslims. It's 2 billion Muslims, and we are powerless to the things that are happening to us. If they can take the third holiest city, why can't they take the second? Why can't they take the first? When is the last straw? When is it too much? When is it, we have a president who called every African country a terrible, terrible word. I can't mention it in Musala. But what is happening? What is the repercussions? There would be repercussions if you said that about Jewish people, and they are in the extreme minority. It's probably 18 million Jews on earth, and there are almost 2 billion Muslims. 18 million goes into 2 billion a bunch of times, right? But what are we doing? I think that we don't realize that we are the chosen people. Muslims are special people. Every single Muslim on earth, and particularly Muslims in America, the wherewithal, the strength, the resolve that you need to be a Muslim in America is something that is profound, something that makes you strong. I mean, there are people who can't be Muslims because they're afraid to do what we do and to believe what we believe and say what we say. There was a sister here that she was talking about all the people that used to be in this community and all the children that were here. And the other sister said, I want to get a kind of a poll of how many people that are children still are Muslims. And there's a Pew research report saying something similar about people who were born Muslims and then they changed to a different religion. And some of the reasons they gave was because they wanted to assimilate more with the American society, or that they didn't believe in everything in Al-Islam. One of those problems is that we didn't teach them properly. I need to make sure my son here understands that there is nothing that is in competition with Al-Islam. There's nothing, if you want to choose something else, it wouldn't be because it's better than Al-Islam. In other words, you can't find something that is better. There are people who are not religious, and that probably has to do with them wanting to do other things, other worldly things. But choosing a different path, choosing Christianity, choosing Buddhism, choosing Judaism, any other ism against Al-Islam is not a step that's in a better direction. You aren't bettering yourself or bettering the community by being something other than a Muslim. And we need to make sure that people are aware of that. But also that we are in a position to know the truth. And if we understand how powerful the truth is, in that we live our lives in a way that is beneficial, not just for us, but for the community, for society at large. So if you pray 5 times a day, you give charity, you are empathetic towards other people, you are in community with other people, you make Hajj with everybody from every other nationality, then you'll realize that the status that Allah has given you has blessed you tremendously to have what is true. It's because people who are living and alive, they are living in turmoil. They are living a life that is less than what Allah has prescribed for them. Allah chose us to be righteous. So I asked my son the other day, I said, what is the reason that you are on this earth? And I asked him, was it being a good son, being a good friend, being a good humanitarian? All of those things are encompassed in worshiping Allah. When Allah says He has created you but to worship Him, everything that is good, everything that is not bad is in service to Allah and in worship of Allah. If we understood that, if we understood that purpose, we should be able to change things. We should be able to move mountains, move people, because there's nothing that is in opposition to Al-Islam except something that is false. And Allah says when you hurl truth towards falsehood, it disappears. So if we don't open our mouths, that's the only way that falsehood can fester and live. Assalamu alaikum.
I definitely agree with you, brother. When it comes to, people, I think it's a lack of education as a whole as to what Islam is that allows people, the generation that came after the elders that didn't fully embrace Islam or went in other directions, I think it was a lack of education. In most cases, I think we make Islam too complicated. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the way we express it is way too complicated. Half the time, people that we're talking to don't even understand what we're saying to them.
Sure.
We're talking in a whole different language. There's, the ideas, like what is a fundamentalist? Right? Like, when people think of fundamental Muslims, they're thinking of extremists, right? But the fundamentals of Islam are the 5 pillars. That's the fundamentals. Like, just that simple. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just that simple. Do you believe in God? Yeah, you believe in God. Oh, you do. Do you believe that God has prophets? Oh, you do. Or you believe in making church? Oh, you do. Like, it's just that simple. Yeah. And I think most people, when we express it from this high explosive, breaking atoms type of like a disposition, and it scares people away because they think it's a burden. When we clearly know in the Quran states that God will not place that type of burden on you, like a burden on you that you would not be able to bear. So, yeah, I think it's the lack of education, and in the American context, I think it's the lack of connection too. It's like if someone came to me today and wanted to share with me what Hinduism was, I have no connection, like spiritually, to what could consider to be Hinduism, right? Like, I mean, it may sound interesting from an academic perspective, but I couldn't find myself in a position of trying to worship in that particular way. Not only because I don't think it's true, but there's no type of connection there. Whereas in Islam, there's a huge connection there with American people, African American people, and other people, like in the context of America, and like just from a historical perspective, because if people knew that in the American context, if people knew that Islam was just as American as apple pie, if they knew that all the people that they loved and aspired to were Muslim, when they start talking about how whether or not Mike Tyson can beat up Muhammad Ali, that these are 2 Muslims. You know what I'm saying? Some people don't even know Mike Tyson is a Muslim. You know what I'm saying? So it's like those type of things. Abdul Kareem, playing basketball, you have Muslims all throughout the NBA. You know what I'm saying? Like, but people don't see that connection. So when they hear Islam, they're thinking something foreign. When in actuality, when the term "the sun will rise in the west" was a true concept. You know what I'm saying? It was a true symbolic concept. The sun is rising in the west. As far as when it comes to the idea of God. You know what I mean?
So there's a couple of things I wanted to mention with that. I think I'm going to mention one of the last part is that when you're talking about the sun rising in the west, I think African Americans have tremendous opportunity in America.
Of course.
That when I said that we will replace you with another people and they won't be like you, we have the opportunity to be that people, to be that chosen people for America, to lead them into Al-Islam. We are already integrated into this system, and we are strong enough to be the president of the United States. So we have the influence that maybe other communities don't have. We understand the history of America. We understand the psychology of the people who are in control. The thing that I think Muslims don't do enough of, particularly with people who are totally against them and making rules against them. When I saw this thing when they were talking about Trump voters, and one of the ladies just blurted out, she was like, well, Jerusalem is a part of, as a capital of Israel now. And I'm like, why is that a topic that you are concerned about? If you're not a Muslim, but the point I wanted to make is that we have Al-Islam, like people converted in droves when they understood what the truth is. So there's 2 things that I think happens whenever I try to speak to someone who is against what I believe in and they're saying something like utterly crazy, is that either you accept what I'm saying or you be quiet. And that's what I want to happen. So when they say something that is crazy, right, or something that is completely Islam, I mean,
And
unfounded, it's not the truth at all, I want them to be quiet, right? So we can make them be quiet, or we can make them accept what we believe, because we have what is truth. So the other thing is that in that Pew review, it was saying some of the people left because of congregation. And I need to understand that better, because I will be a Muslim if there's no other Muslims on earth. If I'm the last one, I'm going to be a Muslim. But there are other people who like, or who need camaraderie, who need people around them to, I mean, the congregation period is supposed to strengthen you. You know, that's the reason we have prayer with multiple people here. But it doesn't matter to me whether it's nobody, if everybody else say I'm stop being a Muslim, or everybody else move away. But that's one thing that I need to understand better. And the other thing that you mentioned initially was about words and semantics. They, in the media and in America, they have control over semantics, unfortunately. Fundamentalism. If you are a fundamentalist or you are a moderate Muslim, moderate means you average. You know, like who wants to be moderate? Who wants to be average? You know, so fundamentals would be just the basics of it, right? And then that's all people need to be Muslims, but they think that it's something, like you said, it's something that we make into trigonometry or algebra. It's simple. You can be a Muslim today if you want to be a Muslim. You don't have to, I think about the Quran over and over again, right? And it says, belief and righteous deeds.
Yeah.
You can do that immediately. Like, and then Allah says that is what makes you better than other people, right? So it could be somebody who's a hafiz in Quran, but they are bad people. Immediately, if you do what's righteous and you have belief, then you can, like the brother said, if you start today, right, all of your sins, you are wiped clean. You're better than all the Muslims alive right now. Allah wipes your slate completely clean starting today, you know, and then moving forward, you do what's righteous and you believe in Allah. I mean, who is more merciful than that? They're talking about this God of love. Like, what other God is more loving than that? Yes.
Going back to Jacob, the beginning of the Western Empire, the man Muhammad spoke on that, and he said that there's two Jacobs.
Mm-hmm.
There's the godly Jacob, the righteous Jacob, and the unrighteous or the devilish Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that Jacob, we forgot to mention, Jacob was nicked on the thigh.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and he explained that being nicked by Satan. Satan, he was wrestling with his own ungodliness.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to remember too that Jacob was a prophet of God.
Mm-hmm.
So he had the knowledge.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. So you have a righteous Jacob who followed the pattern God wanted him to follow, and then you got the unrighteous Jacob. Now, the unrighteous Jacob is the one that you see that Israel today.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that they're doing is unrighteous.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, to go back to my other point, you have some righteous Jews,
Mm-hmm. For sure.
and you have some unrighteous Jews. And those are the ones that follow Satan.
I think it's not a coincidence when Allah says in the Quran that the learner of the children of Israel know the truth, right?
Yes.
I feel the same way about pastors, like the same way I feel
Yes.
about rabbis. If you dedicate your life to learning, I can tell almost immediately your sincerity. I mean, it's the people who are everyday Christians and Jews who are not aware of what the truth is. It is crystal clear. If you take any time to think about it, there's a religion that says God is one, and you believe in Him and worship Him and follow Him. Even in Judaism, they have what is called the Noahide laws. So these are laws that are given to people who are not Jews, but it's only like 7 laws. You have to fool yourself to believe in a favoritism, a God that shows favoritism. Like we believe in Allah, He is merciful to all, but He is especially merciful to the people who do what's right, because that's what He created you to do, is what is right.
Right. And that's Muslim.
And that's Muslim. So they are the Jewish people who are not in the know are Muslims for all intents and purposes, because they are intending to do what Allah plans for them to do and what Allah wants them to do. They just are being misguided by people who know better and should know better.
Right. Right.
I think also one thing, two things actually.
Mm-hmm.
I think like the point of the Jacob, the good Jacob and the bad Jacob, as Muslims, we have to believe it, and I'm gonna tell you why we have to believe it in that
Because we
way.
wrestle with the devil from within.
But we can't literally believe that a man wrestled with
With
God.
God, that's what I was
As
getting
Muslims,
at.
we can't, we
Yes.
just can't, we can't
He
believe that.
wrestled with
You know what I'm saying?
himself.
Yeah, because, I mean,
Because we wrestle with ourselves.
yeah, it's just, you know, just Tawheed in
Yes.
itself, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no way that a
Yes.
man can have the type of
Yes.
power
Right.
to wrestle with the supreme being.
Right, well,
No, well, physically, I mean, literally, figuratively, we do that every day, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But physically, we just can't, we can't do that.
But can I just say that,
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know this thing about the two Davids, because I think that, you know, the Quran portrays every prophet in a positive way. And
Yes.
The Bible gives
Yes.
negative
Mhm.
characteristics to many of them.
mhm.
And I think that you're talking about Jacob or Yaqub, well, Beni Yaqub and the children of
Mhm.
Yaqub, and that's two different things, and so you shouldn't say to Jacob, because that makes it seem like Yaqub, Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam, had two personalities, good and bad, and he didn't.
Well, what I was saying is that the interpretation from the Bible, not the Quran,
Mhm.
interpretation, because Jacob wrestled with itself, his inner being.
Yeah, well, I
And that's
just,
what I was getting
I
at.
mean, yeah, but to say it, be careful.
Yeah, how to
Understood.
interpret,
When-
yeah,
when
I agree
say
with you.
that to me.
I agree with
Understood.
you, yeah.
Well, my second point is, I think another thing that I think is complicated for people that aren't Muslims to kind of grasp is that when we use the terms like Muslim and Islam, there's no point of origin of the concept. What I mean is that for most people, when they interpret Muslim, when they hear the term Islam, they're thinking of a starting point with the Prophet.
Mhm.
That's what
Mhm.
they think.
Sure.
Like, as Muslims, we don't interpret it that way.
Mhm.
The wholehearted submission to the will of God is the order of the universe.
Mhm.
You
Sure.
understand, like, from its inception.
Mhm.
Like, everything in the universe is in its proper order. Mankind was created to submit to God,
Mhm.
right? That's the purpose. So the people that we're considered to be Jewish, or we're using these titles and labels, in all actuality, it was created to be Muslim. It was
Mhm.
created to submit to God.
Mhm.
Their deviation from submitting to God is their own conscious choice,
Mhm.
Right,
right?
and that's
So,
what I was trying to
Yeah,
say.
so that I think that's also another thing.
And that's what our children do.
Yeah, so that's another thing that makes it murky is that when people walk away from Islam,
Mhm.
they're looking for what they to submit to God, but they're walking away from the very thing that's given them
For
the
sure.
instruction. So.
But then that is, I mean, in some instances, obviously, it is, or in all instances, it's their decision. But we have to make sure that we make that foundation solid and as solid as we can, because people obviously ultimately make their own decisions.
Right.
I forgot what I was going to say about that, but just that, like, maybe when we are explaining to other people who are not Muslims, we understand, we say Islam and Muslims, we have to give the explanation. We're talking about submission to the will of Allah, submission to the will of God. You know, if that's, it's unfortunate that we still have to say God just to, you know, make sure we don't alienate other people, but that is, you know, the reality.
Yeah.
So when we're saying submitting your will to the will of God, the problem though is that saying you submit yourself to the will of God, no one can argue that, right? But except for possibly Christians who think it's a relationship, which means you don't have to do anything.
Right.
Or at least they think that you don't have to do anything, which is, you know, like unfortunate because you have to explain to them, you know, Jesus says the way to hell is the narrow way. The way to paradise is the hard way. You got to do something. You know, he says, pick up your cross and follow me. Do what I do. If I handle responsibilities the way I handle them. When in the definition of Christianity is to do what Jesus did, right? But no one does what Jesus did. They just believe in him.
Oh, my other thing I wanted to say is that all the revelation that the prophets brought were Islam.
For sure.
And man has taken it and
Mhm.
twisted it and turned it and polluted it.
I think the other thing that is is a very good point, is that what everyone else possesses is not what the actual prophets had.
Exactly.
You know,
That's
if
what I
you
was getting
can
at.
articulate that and explain it to them, to some people, then maybe they'll be able to understand that what you are saying is from Moses is not from Moses.
Right.
You know, Jesus didn't write any of those words that are in there.
Right.
Neither that Dawood, they're not, the Zabur is not the Psalms. I mean, they don't know who wrote it. You know, it's anonymous books. Nobody knows who wrote them. Even, you know, the Gospels, nobody, even though they have names on them, the books are anonymous. Anybody could have written those books. So I think it's a lot of education that we have to do. But ultimately, we have what is true. So it's two options. You can accept it or be quiet. That's what that's what I'm going with.
I just want to add one thing is that the terms that we're using in terms of Christians and Jews appears nowhere in the Arabic of the Quran.
Right.
And this is what you find in your translation. And so, in fact, the word that referring to the Yahud is not an Arabic word at all. And so they really, the Christians are the Nasara, the ones who were helpers, and the ones who are referred to, Bani Israel is that overwhelming 12-tribe group. But then the Yahud are the ones out of those 12 tribes who realized the wrongs that they had done and began to repent. So that's the Yahud, and Christians and Jews is just a term that, because it's been used for so long in different translations, that it becomes taken as if that's what it says, but it does not use those
I
terms.
mean, it didn't say that in the Bible. It didn't say Judaism or Christianity. I don't know. I just feel like Al-Islam would free people so much if they understood it and accepted it. They would be able to understand the religion that they claim to be following better, whatever that religion is. I just saw, I bought this book on Egyptology, right? And they talk about Nataru. I didn't know Nataru means attributes. Man,
Yeah, that's really.
you know it means attributes? I mean, so, in other words, like I said, they believed in one God and then they started worshiping the different attributes. Every African country had one God and then they had different attributes for him. It's the same thing that's happening throughout the world. I mean, Hinduism was the same thing. They started worshiping the different attributes. Initially they gave them their own personality and their own persona and then started worshiping them separately. Yusuf, when he was in jail, said to the Egyptians, he said, would you rather worship one God or multiple gods? I mean, that's like common sense. If you ask anyone, would you rather have one president or 10? I mean, like, how are you going to follow all of them? It is so basic and so obvious that what happened. And then I think Christianity is like a great example. Christianity can help show you how people deviated away from what is true, despite the fact that we have the words or an approximation of what he said, and he never said any of the things that they ascribe to. Any more questions? All right, Assalamu alaikum.